Disrespect, it creeps into our lives in subtle glances, sharp tones, and careless words. It arrives unexpectedly, sometimes from strangers, other times from those closest to us. And yet, it stings all the same. But what if we didn't have to be shaken by it? What if we could meet disrespect not with defensiveness or anger, but with an unshakable calm? The ancient Stoics believed this was not only possible, it was essential. The Stoic path begins with a radical shift, understanding that no external insult, no matter how cruel or unfair, has the power to harm us, unless we allow it. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, famously said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." It's a lesson in emotional sovereignty. When someone speaks to us with contempt, they're expressing their own inner turmoil, not defining our worth. Their behavior is theirs to own. Ours is the response, and that is where our power lies. This might sound passive, but it's far from it. To remain calm in the face of insult isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's the product of inner work, of examining our emotions and detaching our identity from every opinion hurled our way. Imagine someone cutting you off mid-sentence to mock your thoughts. The heat rises. Your heart pounds. But instead of snapping back, you breathe. You observe the anger without acting on it. This is the first act of Stoic defiance, not reacting. The next step is looking inward. Self-reflection isn't self-blame, it's self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In the face of disrespect, the Stoic doesn't just ask, "How dare they?" They also ask, "Did I contribute to this? Was I unclear? Harsh? Defensive?" This isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about rising above the emotional fog to gain clarity. Reflecting on your own role, even when minor, ensures your next move is aligned with virtue rather than vengeance. But self-reflection alone isn't enough if we're still at the mercy of impulse. That's why Stoics value the pause, those crucial few seconds between stimulus and response. Seneca warned that every time we give in to anger, we reinforce it like a habit. So we must train the opposite habit. When someone disrespects you, your first duty is to stop. Breathe. Think. By waiting, even just a moment, you reclaim control. You turn an emotional reflex into a thoughtful decision. That space, that pause, is where your dignity lives. And within that space, there's room for something radical, empathy. Not sympathy. Not approval. Empathy. The capacity to understand that the person who hurt you may be acting from fear, insecurity, or pain. Epictetus urged us not to look for good or evil in external things, but in ourselves. But he also believed that we are all part of a shared human experience. What if the person who insulted you is struggling with a burden you can't see? What if their anger is a shield, their disrespect a cry for control in a life that feels chaotic? Seeing this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it can soften your response. It turns conflict into an opportunity for compassion. This ability, to pause, reflect, and empathize, doesn't mean you let people walk over you. That's a common misunderstanding. Stoicism is not passive tolerance. It's active integrity. And that means concentrating on virtue, not as an abstract idea, but as the guiding principle in every interaction. When someone treats you poorly, the Stoic asks, what would courage look like here? Justice? Wisdom? Sometimes the answer is silence. Sometimes it's a firm boundary. But always, it must be grounded in reason and inner strength. Seneca said that virtue is nothing other than right reason. So when disrespect hits, the Stoic chooses not to become reactive clay shaped by others' actions, but instead to remain the sculptor of their own character. They aim not to win the argument or prove their worth, but to maintain inner coherence. That's the Stoic reward, not outward triumph, but inward harmony. But what happens when the insult lingers? When it gnaws at your peace days later? This is where Stoicism offers another gift, acceptance. Not the kind of blind acceptance that shrugs at injustice, but the intelligent acceptance that recognizes what lies beyond our control. Epictetus taught that freedom comes not from changing the world, but from changing how we relate to it. We cannot control whether someone respects us. We can only control our response. When we internalize this, disrespect loses its grip. It may still hurt, but it doesn't define us. We learn to accept what we cannot change, and to direct our energy only toward what is ours to shape: our values, our choices, our attitude. This acceptance isn't passive, it's liberating. It frees us from the exhausting effort of trying to manage other people's behavior. It allows us to move forward, unburdened by the emotional residue of disrespect. And sometimes, in the midst of this serious effort to remain composed, there's room for lightness. Humor, when used with wisdom, can be a powerful Stoic tool. Seneca observed that when we know what not to take seriously, we've begun to master ourselves. Humor diffuses tension. It restores perspective. It reminds us that not every slight requires a solemn response. A playful remark, a knowing smile, these can disarm even the most cutting insult. But Stoic humor is never cruel. It's a reflection of calm confidence, not contempt. It says, "You can't touch my peace." And often, that quiet assurance speaks louder than any rebuttal. Yet humor and detachment don't mean withdrawal. Stoicism demands that we remain engaged with the world, and that means sometimes we must draw lines. That's where boundaries come in. Being Stoic doesn't mean being a pushover. It means knowing where your responsibility ends and another's begins. When someone repeatedly disrespects you, you have every right, and in fact, a duty, to assert your values. Not with rage, but with clarity. Not with shame, but with strength. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone continually cuts you off, mocking your ideas. A Stoic doesn't stew in silence or explode in anger. Instead, they calmly say, "I'd like to speak without being interrupted." This isn't weakness. It's command. And when spoken from a place of self-respect, it shifts the entire dynamic. The Stoic is not a rock that lets waves crash against it endlessly. They are a lighthouse, rooted, radiant, and guiding others by their own example. By the end of this first stretch on the path, a pattern begins to emerge. Handling disrespect the Stoic way isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about understanding it. It's about transforming the moment of insult into a moment of choice. And in that choice, we reclaim something far more valuable than anyone's approval: our freedom. To walk the Stoic path in the face of disrespect is to practice restraint, reason, and deep-rooted strength. And as we continue this path, a deeper challenge emerges, not just in how we respond outwardly, but in how we process the event internally. For even when we maintain composure, the sting of disrespect can echo inside us. It tempts us with anger, bitterness, even vengeance. But the Stoics offer a different, quieter triumph: forgiveness. Forgiveness, in the Stoic view, is not about excusing the wrong or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment. Picture someone who insulted you months ago, maybe they never apologized. And yet, you're still carrying that bitterness like a stone in your chest. Seneca would ask, why burden yourself with pain that's not even yours to begin with? The Stoics remind us that the person who wronged us has long since moved on. We, meanwhile, are the ones suffering, again and again, in memory. Forgiveness, then, is not a gift we give the offender, it's a liberation we grant ourselves. It says, "I will not let your words live rent-free in my mind. I will not let your ignorance dictate my peace. I release this not because you deserve it, but because I do." Still, forgiveness is not passive. It's an act of reasoned choice. We forgive not blindly, but wisely. We observe the wrong, we weigh its impact, and then we let go, not because we forget, but because we understand. Forgiveness is aligned with the Stoic ideal of living according to nature, which means living in accordance with our rational minds. And resentment is deeply irrational. It keeps us locked in a moment that's already passed. Letting go doesn't mean tolerating ongoing harm. It means recognizing what no longer serves us. Just as a Stoic would not cling to a broken object or a lost opportunity, they would not cling to past insults. Each day offers a new chance to decide who we want to be. Do we want to be someone defined by past wounds, or by present clarity? And clarity, often, comes from changing perspective. When we're hurt, we tend to zoom in, obsessing over every word, every facial expression. The Stoic, however, steps back. They widen the frame. Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal, war, and loss during his reign, practiced this mental distancing. He reminded himself often, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Perspective is one of the most powerful Stoic tools. It transforms a personal slight into a moment of reflection. Instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" we might ask, "Why does this affect me so much? What belief am I holding on to that makes this hurt so deeply?" Sometimes, we realize we've given others too much control over our self-worth. Sometimes, we realize we're chasing validation from people who cannot even offer it to themselves. Think of the person who belittles others to feel bigger. The Stoic sees them not as a villain, but as someone lost in their own emotional chaos. Their disrespect, when viewed with a wider lens, becomes less an attack and more a mirror, revealing their own struggles, their own lack of peace. And when you understand this, the insult shrinks. It no longer touches the core of who you are. In this light, disrespect becomes not a source of anger, but an opportunity to practice wisdom, to strengthen patience, to remember what truly matters. For the Stoics, life is a training ground. Every hardship, every difficult person, every offense is a test of character. And the person who can remain just, calm, and clear-eyed amidst this chaos, they are the true victor. But let's be clear, changing perspective doesn't mean we become indifferent to wrong behavior. It means we choose not to let it poison our inner life. We recognize the harm, we address it if necessary, but we do not carry it any further than we must. Our emotional space is too valuable to rent it out to resentment. In fact, by changing our perspective, we open the door to a deeper sense of purpose. We no longer see each insult as a disruption, but as part of the work of self-cultivation. Like a blacksmith tempers iron with fire, life tempers our soul with trials. The Stoics didn't wish for ease. They wished for strength. They wanted to become the kind of person who could meet life's storms without being swept away. And so, the practice becomes not just internal, but daily, habitual. Every interaction is a choice. Will you meet that rude comment with irritation, or with calm? Will you assert your boundaries out of fury, or out of clarity? Will you carry that wound, or will you drop it and walk lighter? This is where we begin to internalize the Stoic way, not just as a response strategy, but as a mode of being. It's not about pretending you're unaffected. It's about choosing what affects you. It's about realizing that every moment of conflict is an invitation to return to yourself, to your principles, your reason, your peace. Imagine someone rolls their eyes at your ideas in a meeting. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt or annoyance, you take a breath. You remind yourself, their opinion doesn't define my worth. You respond calmly, firmly. Maybe you even ask them a clarifying question, not to challenge them, but to understand. That choice, to pause, to reflect, to speak with clarity, is Stoicism in motion. It's philosophy not as theory, but as muscle memory. Over time, these small choices compound. They build the habit of calm. The habit of reason. And eventually, disrespect stops hitting the same nerve. It may still come, but it no longer controls you. That is the quiet superpower Stoicism offers, invulnerability not through avoidance, but through inner alignment. It's important to emphasize, too, that this journey isn't linear. You'll have days when the insult hits harder. When you react despite your best intentions. When the silence you offer feels more like suppression than strength. And that's okay. The Stoic doesn't aim for perfection, they aim for progress. Each misstep is simply more material for reflection, more fire for the forge. What matters is returning to the path. Returning to reason. Asking again, what's in my control? What kind of person do I want to be right now? What response reflects my highest values? And as you keep choosing that path, something remarkable happens. Disrespect stops being a threat to your identity. It becomes an echo, a test you've already passed. You walk through it not with defensiveness, but with quiet dignity. You stop chasing the approval of the world, and instead become someone whose worth is rooted deep and unmoved. This is the paradox of the Stoic approach. You become strongest when you stop needing to prove your strength. You become calmest when you stop demanding fairness. You become free the moment you stop being controlled by how others treat you. And all of this is forged in the seemingly small, daily encounters, the comments, the glances, the subtle slights. Each one, an invitation. To pause. To reflect. To rise. The deeper one walks the Stoic path, the more one realizes that handling disrespect isn't just about managing conflict, it's about mastering the self. We often believe that our reactions are natural, automatic, justified. But the Stoics challenge this assumption. They ask us to examine not just the external trigger, but the internal habit. Why does that slight pierce so deeply? Why do certain words spark anger while others do not? The answer lies not in the words themselves, but in the meaning we attach to them. This is why the Stoic insists on returning, again and again, to the inner world. It is the battleground where true power is won. Consider this: two people are insulted in exactly the same way. One erupts with rage. The other smiles calmly and carries on. The insult was the same, but the experience was not. What changed? Not the external event, but the interpretation. The story we tell ourselves about the event is what determines its emotional weight. So, the Stoic trains this inner narrator. Like a sculptor chipping away at stone, they work daily to refine their perspective, to remove distortion, to discard irrational beliefs, to replace emotional impulse with reason. Disrespect, then, becomes not a cause for chaos but a signal. A reminder to examine the mind. What am I telling myself about this? Why do I believe their words matter more than my values? These questions aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of depth. One of the most powerful tools in this refinement process is humor. Used skillfully, humor allows us to meet disrespect not with resentment, but with levity. Imagine someone makes a sarcastic comment meant to undermine you. Instead of reacting defensively, you respond with a light quip or a knowing smile. This disarms the moment. It interrupts the expected script. More importantly, it shows that your peace is not fragile. That your ego doesn't need to win every exchange. This kind of humor is not cruel or mocking. It's grounded, confident, and quietly powerful. Seneca once wrote, "A good character, when it is established, becomes immune to insults." But how do we build that character? How do we ensure that humor, calm, and reason are not occasional responses, but our default way of being? The answer lies in repetition, daily, conscious practice. And this practice isn't limited to private reflection. It extends into how we interact with others, especially when setting boundaries. A common misconception about Stoicism is that it promotes passivity, that it teaches us to accept all behavior with a smile. Nothing could be further from the truth. Stoicism teaches resilience, yes, but also justice. It teaches compassion, but also clarity. So when someone repeatedly crosses a line, belittles you in public, violates your space, disrespects your time, a Stoic does not retreat or absorb the insult in silence. They speak. Calmly. Clearly. Firmly. I don't accept being spoken to that way. This isn't how I choose to be treated. These are not confrontations. They are affirmations of self-respect. Boundaries, when expressed with composure and consistency, teach others how to treat us without demanding, threatening, or blaming. And here lies the subtle brilliance of Stoic assertiveness: it removes the emotional fuel from the fire. The person who disrespects you expects one of two things: submission or retaliation. But when you respond with principled calm, you disrupt the cycle. You take control, not of them, but of the moment. You steer the encounter toward respect, even if they don't follow. But let's be honest, setting boundaries is uncomfortable. It requires courage. Especially when the disrespect comes from those close to us. A parent. A partner. A boss. The stakes feel higher. The fear of rejection stronger. That's why Stoic strength must be rooted in something deeper than pride. It must be rooted in virtue. Virtue is not an abstract concept for the Stoic. It is the living core of their identity. Courage. Wisdom. Justice. Temperance. These are not ideals, they are choices, made moment by moment, often in silence, often unseen. When you choose to hold your tongue rather than retaliate, that is temperance. When you speak truth to someone despite your fear, that is courage. When you extend empathy to someone who doesn't deserve it, that is justice. And when you do all of this with awareness, that is wisdom. The Stoic knows that every encounter is a mirror. The way you handle disrespect reflects not just on them, but on you. It reveals whether your values are mere decoration or lived reality. And that's the true challenge: to live what you believe. To walk into the world each day not hoping to be treated well, but prepared to be tested, and determined to respond well. Forgiveness, then, becomes not just an emotional act, but a rational one. It's the result of seeing clearly that holding on to offense is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. That by clinging to resentment, you tie your identity to the very people you wish to move beyond. So the Stoic forgives, not to free the other, but to free themselves. And in doing so, they become untouchable. But this isn't easy. Even the Stoics admitted that their principles were aspirational. Marcus Aurelius wrote often of his own failures, his moments of frustration, his struggles to stay composed. And yet he kept returning. Kept reflecting. Kept practicing. Because he understood that mastery is not a finish line, it's a direction. A commitment. And that commitment gives birth to something rare: tranquility. Not a shallow, surface calm, but a deep-rooted peace that cannot be shaken by someone's tone of voice or a cutting remark. Tranquility is the fruit of 1,000 small choices: choosing to pause instead of react, to clarify instead of accuse, to walk away rather than escalate, to listen more than speak. And this tranquility transforms how you carry yourself. People notice. They sense that you are not easily provoked, not constantly seeking approval or afraid of disapproval. That you speak from a place of inner authority. That your self-worth is not up for debate. And ironically, this often earns you the very respect that others chase, but without you ever demanding it. At this point, Stoicism ceases to be a reaction to disrespect; it becomes a lifestyle that prevents it from landing in the first place. Your presence sets a tone. You walk into rooms with quiet confidence. You no longer fear conflict, because you no longer need to win. You know who you are. And that knowing becomes your shield. Still, the world won't stop testing you. There will be the rude waiter, the passive-aggressive colleague, the dismissive friend. And in those moments, you will feel the familiar tug, the urge to snap, to defend, to strike back. But then you'll remember, I am not my reaction. I am not their opinion. I am the space in between, the choice. And that space, cultivated daily, becomes your sanctuary. It becomes your home. A place no one can enter unless invited. That is the ultimate boundary. Not the wall you build to keep people out, but the gate you place around your peace, opened only by intention. So when the insult comes, as it surely will, you won't brace or flinch. You'll simply return home. To calm. To clarity. to the values that define you, not just in theory, but in practice. And slowly, the world around you changes. Not because people become kinder, but because you become clearer. Because you've stopped trying to control how you're treated, and mastered how you respond. That's the shift. That's the freedom. That's the Stoic way. By now, the Stoic response to disrespect has revealed itself not as a strategy of avoidance, but as an act of courage. To remain composed when provoked, to extend empathy when wronged, to assert boundaries without aggression, these are not signs of passivity. They are expressions of deep inner strength. But Stoicism doesn't stop at coping with disrespect. Its aim is transformation, not only to protect your peace, but to grow stronger through adversity. That is the final lesson on this path. Growth through adversity is a recurring theme in Stoic writings. Epictetus, who lived much of his life in chains, taught that difficulty is the training ground of virtue. He believed that every hardship, including disrespect, is a chance to sharpen the soul. So when someone insults you, the Stoic doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, they ask, "What is this moment asking of me?" That shift, from victim to student, changes everything. It turns disrespect from a wound into a weight you can lift. And like any physical weight, the more you lift it, the stronger you become. That rude coworker becomes a lesson in patience. That passive-aggressive family member becomes a test of empathy. That stranger's careless words become a mirror, forcing you to examine your ego and refine your boundaries. This is what the Stoics meant by turning obstacles into opportunities. Marcus Aurelius put it succinctly, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Disrespect, then, is not a detour, it is the road itself. The road where your resolve is built, your compassion is deepened, your character is defined. This is not philosophy as theory, it is philosophy as fire, and you are the iron being forged. Still, there is one crucial piece left to complete the Stoic picture: detachment from outcomes. Most of our pain in the face of disrespect doesn't come from the moment itself, it comes from what we wanted that moment to be. We wanted to be understood, appreciated, treated fairly. And when that doesn't happen, we suffer, not because of what is, but because of what we hoped for. The Stoic solution is not to stop wanting things, but to release our attachment to them. We can desire respect, but we must not hinge our identity on it. We can wish for kind treatment, but we must not unravel when we receive the opposite. The real test of strength is not in getting what you want, but in remaining whole when you don't. That's why Stoicism doesn't promise you a conflict-free life. It promises you something better: the ability to walk through conflict unbroken. To remain rooted when the world sways. To be grounded in values, not moods. To define yourself not by what others give you, but by what you choose to become. And this detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It allows you to care without clinging. To engage without being entangled. To love without being enslaved by the fear of rejection. In the realm of disrespect, this clarity becomes your shield. It allows you to witness someone's rudeness without internalizing it. To hear the insult but not swallow it. To feel the sting but not carry the scar. Ironically, this very detachment often creates better outcomes. People are drawn to those who don't beg for respect, but who embody it. There's a quiet authority in someone who doesn't chase validation. Who can say no without anger, yes without fear, and enough without drama. This presence doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from alignment, with reason, with purpose, with truth. This kind of presence becomes especially powerful when we are tested repeatedly, when disrespect doesn't come as a single event, but as a pattern. Perhaps you're in a workplace where condescension is normalized. Or a family where subtle digs go unchecked. Or a relationship where passive control hides behind jokes and silence. The Stoic path here becomes more than a set of tools, it becomes a declaration: I will not participate in my own diminishment. This may mean removing yourself. It may mean drawing sharper boundaries. It may mean choosing solitude over toxic connection. These are not acts of withdrawal. They are acts of wisdom. For the Stoic, protecting your peace is not selfish. It is responsible. It is the foundation from which all other virtues can grow. And from that foundation, you build not just defenses, but direction. You begin to use every challenge as raw material for your becoming. You ask not just, how do I protect myself from disrespect, but how do I grow more patient, more courageous, more principled because of it? You stop fearing the moments that test you, and begin seeking them. Because you trust yourself to meet them well. In this way, Stoicism turns even the ugliest parts of life into opportunities for beauty. A rude comment becomes a doorway to strength. A dismissive tone becomes a mirror of your growth. A betrayal becomes the forge where your boundaries are reborn. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Everything can serve the journey, if you meet it with the right spirit. That's the ultimate paradox of Stoicism. What once threatened your peace becomes the very thing that deepens it. What once made you reactive now makes you reflective. You no longer dread disrespect, you welcome the chance to refine your response. To strengthen your soul. To live as the Stoics did, not ruled by emotion, but guided by principle. And so, the next time someone disrespects you, pause. Look inward. Ask yourself, is this moment a threat, or an opportunity? Am I being tested, or invited? Can I meet this with clarity? With dignity? With restraint? And if you choose yes, you will have done something rare and powerful. You will have turned a moment of pain into a moment of mastery. You will have proven that real power is not in the words you say back, but in the peace you never gave away. This is the Stoic way. Not because it's easy, but because it leads to freedom. The kind of freedom that cannot be taken. The kind of freedom that is felt in your breath, in your silence, in the way you move through the world without fear. Let others shout. Let others demand. Let others disrespect. You stay grounded. You stay still. You stay you. Because the highest form of respect is not what others give you. It's what you never lose, no matter what.